People who quit a job on the first day, what happened?
I worked at Home Bargains and did my first shift on a Saturday. I was off on the Sunday originally, and they waited until 11 p.m. on the Saturday to call me and not ask me, but tell me to cover a Sunday. But the conversation went as followed. Hey, we've changed the rota and you're working tomorrow 8 a.m., 5 p.m. I was busy on the Sunday as I had family commitments since I assumed I was free, being my day off. Oh, I can't work tomorrow, I have plans. Well, that will go down as an unauthorized absence if you don't turn up. All right, then I quit. What? I then hung up and never went back.
I worked somewhere similar and we wouldn't get our rota often until the day before. It was absolutely awful.
Reminds me of a retail job of mine that would put you on the schedule as on call. You would have to call them the day of that shift, 2 hours prior, and see if they needed you to come in. At first, it didn't bother me since I always expected to go in. Then the newness faded, and it was like a panic those few hours before calling, especially when I just needed a day off. My anxiety was getting out of control. The beauty was when they said they didn't need you. There was one time my dog had a procedure to remove a malignant tumor, and I was not feeling it. I called a manager a little before the 2-hour window, and she confirmed she didn't need me that day. Relieved and in my feelings, I snuggled my boy and had a couple of drinks. About an hour before my shift, I was called in. I told them that I confirmed with a manager that I didn't and now wouldn't be able to. I praise retail workers because I could never do it again.
Was this Victoria's Secret? They did this exact thing and it was the fucking worst.
I spent 12 years working for Domino's Pizza, and this is how it went. We'd get the schedule Sunday for the week that started Monday, the first 10 years anyway. I was the store manager the last 2 years, and I did the schedules 2 weeks ahead. That gave people time to make plans, appointments, and switch shifts.
I ran a grocery crew in retail and had the schedule written out 2 months ahead, taking into consideration day off requests and giving my guys at least 2 consecutive days off a week. Shitty retail scheduling is just lazy managers.
I worked at Costco for a while. Overall, great job, but schedules were a shit show. They only had printed schedules hung in the break room. They would always come out 1 to 2 days before the upcoming week, so we could never make plans for days off ahead of time. Also, they would constantly change the schedules and not notify anyone, even if you were not working and couldn't possibly see the revision without coming in on your day off. Multiple times I got angry calls from management asking where I am on a day I was off. Didn't work till later. Also, I showed up multiple times for morning shifts and was sent back home because I was changed to afternoon for that day. Really gets your blood boiling.
I was working at Zara. They didn't do advertising at the time and instead are very particular about how they set up the store. My last hour was being screamed at by the woman in charge of the store's appearance for not folding clothes fast enough. She was screaming at all of us. Imagine an hour of a woman standing on the top floor alternating between "let's go people" and shouted insults. We finished 15 minutes early, which means we got paid less for doing what the screaming lady wanted. Then we were asked to clock out for a team meeting. We did, and the woman screamed at us so much she drove herself to tears. The woman who hired me apologized on my way out and I told her I wouldn't be back. I didn't even pick up my check, nor have I ever bought anything from Zara ever again. Even secondhand, I won't do it. I have like a PTSD reaction to that store.
If you haven't already, should check the unclaimed property website for your state. If you never picked up your check, those funds should show up there and you can claim it and get it back. I know it's not much, but it's yours.
Not me, but my now wife. She worked one shift at a general store in a mall in our town. The trashy, bright red-dyed hair manager freaked out at her for taking too long to ring in customers at the cash on her first day with literally no training. I picked up her one-day paycheck when I was nearby the next week and never went back. The store was a victim of the pandemic, closed during lockdowns and never reopened.
Zara stores just have the worst vibe on the planet. The employees are consistently so unbelievably slow and seem to be in a terrible mood or are incredibly rude, probably because decent people like you don't last more than a day or because they're treated horribly. The stores are so chaotic, most of them just really poorly organized, and this seemed to be the case across multiple locations and even countries. The business must have the most toxic management in a way that trickles down all the way to the individual stores.
Turned out the company was not registered business and has no license to operate. They also threatened us we'd have to pay them an amount if we quit during the 60-day training period. A few months later, they were shut down.
I had a friend quit from a restaurant her first week out of training, called before her shift and was like, "Yeah, no, I'm done. I just figured I'd give a courtesy call." The manager called her back shortly after, screaming at her that they wasted something like $10,000 training her and that she could be sued if she didn't pay back for a server position. We were stoned out of our minds, and she had him on speaker with the microphone muted, and we were hyperventilating, laughing so hard at this idiot scream into nothing. When she finally composed herself, all she could muster was a half-assed "good luck with that," and then hung up.
I worked at a clothing store for a few weeks. They insisted I spend more than my pay to be up to date on current clothes. My manager scheduled me for 2 hours, every day on Thanksgiving weekend. I found a better job before it, and the way that woman screamed at me when I called to quit was nuts.
Yeah, I worked at Old Navy, and management encouraged me to wear their clothes. I was still balls deep in my metal emo phase, where I wore ripped jeans and band tees, so I said absolutely not. Also, I made like $6.85 an hour at the time, so I didn't have the money for that shit. They folded when I decided to wait for our heavy clearance sales, where you could get shirts and whatnot for like 97 cents, and they decided that they didn't want me constantly wearing last season's clothes. Just give me a fucking uniform at that point, dude. I was not the poster child for Gappy Inc.
I was hired as a cook at a Huddle House. On my first day, I learned that they lied about which shifts I'd have in the interview. I'd be expected to basically run the restaurant alone on graveyard shift after only a week of training, and this place was violating health codes left and right.
I took a phone sales job once. It was cold calling people to sell tickets to a country western show to supposedly benefit the local police department. The foreman had me sit next to someone named Joe and said, "Now you watch Joe for a bit and see how he turns the no's into yeses." First call, Joe starts his speech and then slams down the phone and shouts, "Fuck." Second call is pretty much the same, and he instead shouts, "Fucking bitch," while slamming down the phone. This goes on for about 3 more calls, and then the manager comes over and says, "Okay, so you see how it's done? Let's get you started." I made about 4 calls and then asked it if I could take a smoke break, even though I didn't smoke, and left and never returned.
LMAO. Your experience is almost exactly like mine, except for what they were selling. When I was like 21, this was back in 2000, I was looking for a part-time job just to make some extra money. I had an interview for a data entry job that was in an office in a strip mall. They were very vague on what I'd be doing, but the hours and pay was all right. I showed up 2 days later for my first day and found out I was selling newspaper subscriptions over the phone. Basically, the computer would just auto-dial from a list. I trained with someone for like an hour, then was put on my own. No one really yelled at me, but most people just hung up on me. I did the same thing you did. I told them I was going outside to smoke and just left.
When I was around 14, I worked for Dickie D Ice Cream, think Canadian good humor, for one day riding a bicycle or cooler. You were paid a commission based on what you sold, but you had to pay for your dry ice. Long story short, you had to ride that thing all day in blazing heat to make virtually no money. This was in the mid-80s. I hope this is illegal now.
I figured there was a reason we never see them anymore. Reminds me of my brother's paper route. He had to collect all the money, and if people didn't pay, it came out of his profits. Also something that's gone away.
Yep, that was pretty normal for a paper route. Once a month, we had to collect the fees. Never had a problem getting the money, but always sweated those days. Got paid $7.50 per week. My brother and sister had the hospital runs. They were the best, very lucrative. A paper cost 45-cent heaps of people paid 50 cents. Those 5 cents add up. Every day you had to total the number of papers sold, give the boss the cash, and return unsold papers. Quite often you'd sell out.
Joanne's Fabrics. First day, an old lady slapped me for cutting her fabric too slow. I was like, peace. This isn't the job for me. Edit. To everyone asking, no, I did not stab or cut her in retaliation. I put the scissors down, walked to the manager's office, and told her I quit and why. The manager understood and said something that equated to, sometimes it be like that. I didn't think to file charges. I honestly just wanted to get out of that situation as fast as possible.
Crafty person here. What the hell? Never mess with someone cutting your fabric. Besides, just like basic respect for another human being, they're in charge of a thing you want, and they have very sharp scissors. I'm sorry on behalf of all of us crafty folk for that lady's behavior. I'll bet she was a scrapbooker.
Was 19 in the late 90s, got a job at Miami Subs and showed up to work the first, and heard the manager screaming at a couple of 16-year-old cashiers. Said, nope, not for me. Told the girls they should quit too. Actually ended up giving them a lift home. They lived close to my friend's house. Fast forward, and one of the girls and my friend are married with a couple kids and live in the same town. Small world.
I got hired for the local Taco Bell. On my first day, it was a busy Thursday night, and everyone was stressed and yelling at each other. I was asked to come in at 3 but never told when I was supposed to leave. So I asked because if I was going to be there for a long time, I also wanted a break. The person in charge wasn't even a manager, and they told me they didn't know what to tell me because they don't have a manager right now to make schedules. She mentioned they were open until 3 a.m. and asked me how long I would stay. I got really sketched out, so my next question was about how they were counting for my labor since I was new and wasn't in the computer yet, and there was no manager on site to input my labor manually. She had no idea what I was talking about. I never walked out of somewhere so fast in my life.
What motivated you to quit your job on your first day? Bad working conditions, a hellish schedule, or stupid management? Share your stories in the comments. Put a like and subscribe to the channel to not miss more interesting life stories.